Rain hammered the highway like nails on tin. Blue and red lights pulsed against the black water pooling on the asphalt. Under a sea of umbrellas, big city detectives huddled, arguing over a dead trail. They brought in a country sheriff. What's he gonna do? Lasso the guy? One laughed. Tom McKenna didn't answer. He just knelt by the ditch, his weathered hands sinking into the mud. The storm was washing everything clean except for one thing, a single footprint, half buried, too fresh to ignore. While they stared at screens and cell pings, Tom saw what no one else did. He lifted a matchbook, its logo faded but clear. Riverside Sawmill. Hours later, his flashlight swept across the rusted iron doors. Chains rattled in the wind. Then he heard it, soft, trembling, a child's cry. And in that moment, Tom knew the truth. Before sunrise, the man they mocked would be the only one who could bring her home. Have you ever trusted your gut when everyone else said you were wrong? Tell me about it in the comments. The rain came down in silver threads, turning the shoulder of Highway 9 into a ribbon of mud. Sheriff Tom McKenna crouched low, boots sinking as he traced a finger along a faint groove in the earth. An ATV track, narrow, sharp, veered off the pavement and vanished into trees like a secret swallowed by shadow. Behind him, voices hummed inside a glowing command trailer. Detectives in press jackets hunched over laptops, screens flickering with cell tower pings and heat-mapped grids. Drones in the air, algorithms on standby. More resources than Tom had seen in 20 years of wearing a badge. And yet, 3 days in, no Chloe Michelle. Tom rubbed mud between his fingers, slow and thoughtful. Clues didn't lie, people did. Data misled, but dirt told the truth, if you knew how to listen. Sheriff? Deputy Lucy Grant jogged up the incline, rain dotting her neon shell. 26, sharp-eyed, tech-trained, the future in boots in a badge. They're packing up, she said, nodding towards the SUVs, running deeper analytics back at base. Tom gave a low grunt. Analytics won't find a footprint. She hesitated. You really think this matters? The ATV? He didn't answer right away. His flashlight swept across the track, reading its story. Deep imprint, bold water, heavy load, 2 people, maybe more. Recent, 12 hours tops. Headed into the mountains where ice didn't follow. Finally, he spoke. Girl vanishes on a 10-minute walk she's made 100 times. Cameras checked, towers pinged. They're staring at screens. He nodded toward the trailer's glow. While the truth is sitting in the mud. Lucy followed his gaze, then dropped her voice. Why do they treat you like that? You've solved more cases than all of them. Tom smiled without humor. Because I still believe the ground talks and they don't. Mud sucked at Tom's boot as he stepped past the glare of the floodlights. Behind the tape, the mountains loomed, dark and sharp against the dying sky. Watching, silent, like they already knew how this ended. Sheriff McKenna crouched in the mud, boots sinking, the brim of his hat dripping steady rivulets that streaked the beam of his flashlight. 3 days gone. Chloe Mitchell, 14 years old, on a roll, bright smile, swallowed by this country like a stone dropped in deep water. No ripples, just gone. Behind him, laughter broke through the hiss of the rain. Maybe CSI. Detective Morrison chuckled, zipping his rainproof jacket with a smug-like jerk. All we're missing is Andy Griffith with a magnifying glass. Hayes grinned, packing away his tablet. Guy's been sheriff since dial-up internet. Probably thinks a SIM card is something you mail on Christmas. Their voices rode a storm like taunts from another world. Tom didn't turn, didn't flinch. He'd heard it all before. Let them laugh. Let them believe instincts belonged in a museum beside rotary phones. He kept doing what had never failed him, listening to the land. Because dirt didn't lie, people did. Data could mislead, but the earth told the truth if you knew how to hear it. He swept his beam low and found it. A print pressed in the muck near Chloe's backpack, deep, sharp-edged despite the weather. He knelt, gloved fingers tracing wide, gripped lugs, the kind worn by men who worked slopes where one slip could mean a broken neck. But old, wrong for today. Then it clicked, and the cold bit harder. Caulk boots, loggers' boots, the kind they quit making 15 years ago. Tom's breath fogged in the wet air. Who still wore boots like that? Someone old enough to remember better times, or someone too broken to let them go. Find something? Lucy's voice cut through, soft and tight. She jogged up, water sluicing off her hood, cheeks raw from the cold. Tom didn't look up. Footprint, old logger's gear. Her brow furrowed. Logging's been dead a decade. Not for everyone. His voice was low, steady. He followed the faint depressions leading towards a tree line. Each step was a whisper in the mud. Not for someone who knows these hills better than his own reflection. Behind them, Morrison's voice snapped across the rain, sharp as a whip. We're pulling heat maps now, cell towers, geopings, real science. You guys should try it sometime. Tom didn't turn, didn't answer. His beam caught a twig, chest high, water trembling on the beak. Too clean for the wind, too fresh for rot. Someone had passed, heavy-footed. The angle told the story. 4.5 feet, lower than an adult's shoulder, higher than a child's. His stomach nodded. Someone had carried the weight, or someone. Rain hissed louder as his beam caught something pale under wet leaves. A waterlogged matchbook, cover peeling. He lifted it, reading the faded print. The timberline bar where loggers come to unwind. For a moment, the world went silent. The timberline, once the town's heartbeat, neon buzzing, sawdust floors, jukebox over men burning their lives in whiskey. It died in the mills, boarded 3 winters back, a tomb now. So why was someone carrying its ghost? Sheriff? Lucy's voice was hushed, like the woods might hear her. You think our guy came from there? Tom shook his head slowly. No, he kept this because it meant something to him, to who he used to be. That made him dangerous. A man living in the past will burn the present to keep it alive. He slipped the matchbook into an evidence bag and walked it to Morrison, who barely glanced up from the glow of his laptop. We're running probability grids, Morrison said, fingers clicking. This isn't some hermit with a shrine to Paul Bunyan. These guys don't leave breadcrumbs. He snorted. If this girl's in some old logging camp, I'll eat my badge. The laughter cracked like a whip. Doubt flickered. Maybe they were right. Satellites, algorithms, labs with DNA from a whisper, and him? Just mud under his boots and 30 years of cut. But then, Chloe's photo surfaced in his mind. The bright smile on the board back at the trailer. 14. Missing 72 hours. Every tick of the clock. Another mile between hope and truth. And then he heard Bob's voice, gravel deep, from a lifetime ago, his old supervisor drilling lessons into him. You don't look where they look, Tommy. You look where they don't. The doubt burned away like fog under the sun. He turned back to the road and froze. Another trail, faint under wet leaves, tire tracks. Not ATV, wider, built for work. He crouched, tracing grooves, finding what rain hadn't washed, sawdust. fresh, damp, sweet with sap. Not mill dust, raw cut. The truth hit hard. Chloe's taker wasn't a tech predator. He was old school, a lugger who knew these mountains better than satellites. And he was close enough. The sawdust hadn't grayed. Tom rose, rain cold on his spine. Behind him, the task force glowed like a carnival of false certainty. Ahead, the forest waited, dark and hungry. He adjusted his hat, felt the storm in his bones, and stepped off the asphalt. The dark swallowed him whole. The task force stayed glued to their glowing screens as Tom left the trailer, boots crunching wet gravel. Inside, voices chased data trails like fishermen casting into an empty lake. Outside, the night pressed close, cold, older than the mountains themselves. Tom slid behind the wheel, headlights cutting mist that curled off the asphalt. He didn't need warrants or grid maps. He needed dirt, tracks, something real. Every second Chloe was missing, the clock bled faster. He felt it. The timberline bar still sat on the bend where Highway 9 met Old Mill Road, but time had gutted it. The neon was rusted ribs, windows scarred with spray paint, the porch sagging under silence, but the ground whispered differently. Tom killed the engine and stepped into the hush. Gravel crunched under his boot as his light skimmed the lot. Weeds split the cracks like veins. Then tire tracks, fresh, the rain not yet erasing them. They looped, then angled towards a porch. He slowed, flashlight steady. Beer cans glinted near the door, not old, not rusted, not ghosts. Someone had been here, recently. He climbed the porch steps, and the boards groaned like an old man in pain. His light caught what he was hunting, a bootprint, clear, sharp-edged in dried mud, sheltered by the overhang. Tom crouched low. The pattern spoke from another life. Wide lugs, caulk studs, lugger's boots, not cheap imitations, but the kind worn on slopes where one slip meant a coffin. He brushed rain from the tread, tracing grooves that matched the roadside prints. And not alone. Other tracks overlapped, ghost pacing the same path again and again. Whoever came here hadn't just passed through. He lingered, sat on the porch like the timberline still hummed with neon. Tom rose slowly, the years pressing in. The laughter, the jukebox, men with barbed hands and whiskey faces. Back then, this porch had been a kingdom. Now it was a Tom. He needed eyes, and the sharpest in Millbrook belonged to the woman watching from next door. Mrs. Granger opened the door before he could knock twice. A cardigan draped over her shoulders that still held still after 83 years. Her eyes flicked to the photo he held up. A boot beside the print it had stamped into mud, then back to him. "That's Adam Lawson's," she said, like she was naming a birthmark. "I'd bet my pension on it." The name landed heavily. Tom didn't let it show, but something in his gut tightened. He still comes here? A couple of times a week, brings his own beer, sits on that porch like the bar never closed, stares at them trees like they owe him something. "When's last time?" "3 nights ago." Her voice sharpened. "Right after dark. Stayed a while. Left after he drove past." 3 nights ago. Tom didn't have to check the timeline. Chloe Mitchell vanished that night. He thanked her and turned back toward his cruiser. But his mind was already sprinting ahead, dragging old memories with it. Adam Lawson. Fragments slammed through Tom's head like nails. Adam in his 20s, shoulders wide as a doorway, laughing as he dropped a 100-foot pine with an accuracy that made grown men whistle. Adam on that courthouse night, fist balled, face red, spitting words like bullets. "You're killing this town. You're killing us." Tom gripped the wheel as he drove, headlights slicing through the black. Lucy sat beside him, tablet in her lap, scanning his face. "You know Lawson's?" "Everybody knows Adam." His voice was gravelly. "Best faller in 3 countries. Could make a tree dance where he wanted it, until the mills died. And Chloe's dad was on the board that killed him." Tom didn't answer. Didn't need to. The air in the cruiser said it for him. The ATV trail scarred the earth behind the timberline and crawled into the mountains. Tom killed the engine and stepped out, breathing pine and wet soil. The rain was gone, but the ground remembered, soft, dark, ready for tracks. They moved single file, rifles long, boots careful. Every sound was louder. The drip of needles, crunch of gravel, whisper of wind. A crow burst from a branch, and Lucy jerked like she'd been shot. "Easy," Tom murmured. The trail bent hard around 2 boulders and spilled them into a clearing where time had left its bones. The riverside sawmill. It rose from the mist like a carcass, walls split, rusted saw blades leaning the giant teeth, roof sagging with moss. Tom remembered when it roared 6 days a week, air thick with sawdust and pride in men's hands. Now it was a hollow, except for the chain, severed clean, fresh metal gleaming where bolt cutters bit. Tom's stomach knotted as his light swept the ground. Wet leaves, mud streaked with something pale. He crouched, brushed it off with gloved fingers. Sawdust, fresh, green wood, not mill dust. "Sheriff," Lucy whispered. He followed her gaze and froze. Half hidden under leaves, inches from the mud, lay a sneaker, small, blue, stars stitched along the side. Tom's breath was locked in his chest. He crouched slowly, like the world might shatter if he moved too fast. Brushed the leaves away. It was hers, Chloe Mitchell's. For a long beat, the forest held its breath. Lucy's voice cracked the silence. "Do we call it in?" Tom stared at the mill's black windows. Every instinct screamed the truth. If they waited for backup, they'd be sipping a body bag. His hand hovered the radio, dropped, closed on the rifle instead. "We go in," he said. Lucy didn't argue. She just checked her weapon and fell in behind him as they crossed the clearing toward the mill's yawning mouth. Above them, the sky was ink. Inside, the silence waited like a predator. Then, faint, almost lost, came a sound that turned Tom's blood to ice. A cough, weak, childlike. Chloe was alive, for now. Tom pressed the bolt cutters against the padlock and froze. The world had gone still. No wind combing the pines, no soft chatter of night animals. Even the distant shriek of rain had faded, as if the whole forest were holding its breath with him. One cut, and there's no turning back. His pulse thundered in his ears, loud enough to drown out thought. He shifted his grip, still cold against his gloves, and squeezed. Snap! The lock gave with a sharp metallic crack that shattered the silence like a glass. Tom held his breath, eyes flicking to the shadows. Nothing. No voices, no movement. Just the old sawmill crouching under the moonlight like a dead giant. Ribs of rotted timber jutting against the silvered sky. He waited 5 seconds. 10. The night stayed empty. SWAT was 15 minutes out. The task force, 20. Tom didn't have 15 minutes. He barely had 5. Every second was a match burning down to nothing. From inside came a sound. Faint, muffled. A sob strangled into silence. Tom froze. His muscles turned to stone. Then he heard it. The scrape of a boot on concrete. A man's voice, low and raw, slurred with whiskey and anger. "You should have thought about that before your daddy decided to destroy everything." Tom's stomach clenched, hand on his Glock. He eased the door and slipped inside. The air hit damp and sour, rot, old sawdust, rust on dead machines. Moonlight cut through the holes in the roof, stripping silver and black. Dust drifted like ghosts. Every shadow seemed alive. He moved slowly, boots whispering, Glock low and ready. Boards groaned. A steady trip marked time he didn't have. Then a sob. Choked. A growled word, closer now. People like you. People who take everything, while we get nothing. Tom slipped behind a rusty conveyor belt, heart pounding in his throat. The voice was coming from the back, near the old cutting floor. He eased to the last support beam and peered around it. Chloe Mitchell, alive. She was tied to a chair in the corner, duct taped over her mouth, eyes wide and wet. Tear-streaked face, clothes filthy but no blood. Relief hit Tom, sharp, dizzying, but only for a second. Adam Lawson placed before her like a caged wolf. The years crashed down. Barbecues at the firehouse, parades, Adam grinning under a logging helmet, sawdust in his beard, chainsaw raised like a badge. That Adam was gone. This one was hollowed out, skin tight over bone, eyes bloodshot. A half-empty bottle sagged on the table. In his right hand, a .38 revolver. Adam's voice was gravel ground to dust. They sat in the air-conditioned offices, making decisions about our lives, destroying families like we were numbers on a damn page. Tom stepped out from cover, slow, deliberate, Glock holstered, hands up where Adam could see them. Adam, he said softly, it's Tom. Adam spun, gun flashing under the moonlight. For a second his breath hitched, recognition flaring in his eyes. Then a laugh glowed out from his throat, jagged and bitter. Well, hell, they sent you? The great Sheriff McKenna. Thought they'd send one of those hotshot feds with their fancy tag toys. He sneered, teeth bright in the gloom. Guess they figure this ain't worth the gas money. Tom took a step forward, not too fast, not too close. They sent the right man, someone who knows you. Adam's laugh cracked like glass. Knows me? You don't know what I am anymore. Tom's voice stayed calm, level as a taut rope. I know you're not a killer. Adam's jaw clenched. The revolver didn't waver. From the corner of his eye, Tom caught movement, a shadow sliding along the wall. Lucy, she'd slipped in through the back, waiting for his cue. He flicked her a signal, a tilt of his head, 2 fingers down. Wait. He turned his attention to Adam. You think I wanted this? Adam's voice cracked like rotted timber. You think I chose to torch my life? He slashed again towards Chloe. She flinched, chair screeching. You know what it's like, Tom? Watching everything burn while people like him? The barrel jabbed at Chloe, her father's sins on her shoulders. Vote your future away like it's nothing. David Mitchell made his choice, Tom said. Quiet, steady. But Chloe didn't. She's 14, Adam. Just a kid who wants to go home. Adam's hand shook, just barely. But Tom saw it. The first crack in the dam. I lost everything, Adam whispered. Job, friends, family. You know how it feels to wake up and realize you're nobody? That the only thing you were good at doesn't mean a damn thing anymore? Tom's throat tightened. He did know too well. The day they mothballed the mills, he'd sat in the same courthouse, listening to men argue futures like they were betting on poker chips. And he'd watch Adam walk out with fire in his eyes and nothing in his hands. I know that pain, Tom said, voice low and certain, but I also know this. Doing this won't bring any of it back. It'll just take away the last good thing you got, your soul. For the first time, Adam's eyes flicked to Chloe. The fury in his face faltered. Tom took a slow step closer. His thumb brushed the leather of his holster. The air between them felt like a glass ready to shatter. You got a choice right now, Tom said softly. Be the man who took an innocent girl, or the man who let her live. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint, but swelling like a tide. Adam's head snapped toward the sound. His breath hitched. "They're coming for me," he muttered. "They're coming for her," Tom said. "And you can still make this right before they get here." The gun dipped, just an inch. Tom's pulse roared. His fingers twitched, ready to draw. Then Adam's face hardened, like a storm shutter slamming down. "Too late, Tom." He lifted the gun, and Tom moved. The world exploded into motion. Tom lunged, a blur of muscle and fury, driving a shoulder into Adam's chest. The revolver barked once. Thunder in the cavernous dark. A beam splintered inches from Tom's head. They hit the floor hard, the gun skittering across sawdust. Adam fought like a man with nothing to lose, fist hammering, teeth bared, but Tom had 30 pounds on him and weighed 20 years of grit. He wrenched Adam's arm back, cough-collecting shot in one brutal twist. "It's over," Tom rasped, chest heaving. "It's over, Adam." Lucy burst in, weapon raised, eyes wild. She swept the room, then bolted to Chloe. Her hands were gentle as she tore the tape from the girl's mouth. "You're safe," Lucy whispered. "You're okay now." Chloe sobbed once, a sound like something breaking, and collapsed against her. Tom stood over Adam, breathing hard. The old mill groaned in the wind like a dying giant. Outside, red and blue lights bled through the broken windows. Backup had arrived, too late to matter. Tom holstered his weapon. Look at Chloe, alive, shaken but alive. Her eyes locked on his, gratitude burning like a signal fire through the fog of fear. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Tom let himself breathe. The night air was heavy with exhaust fumes and adrenaline as Tom stepped out of the sawmill. Chloe Mitchell bundled in his jacket. She clung to him like an anchor in the storm, her small hands gripping his sleeve with a kind of desperation only terror could carve into a soul. Blue and red lights strode across the clearing, painting broken machinery and wet earth in harsh colors. The swarm of uniforms and tactical gear parted as he walked, and for the first time in 3 days, silence followed him. Not mockery, not skepticism, just a quiet respect earned the hard way. Chief Inspector Williams waited near the command trailer, flanked by the state detectives and SWAT operators who'd arrived just in time to find the situation already over. The man's polished boots crunched and groveled as he stepped forward, extending a hand that felt more than a protocol. "You didn't just find a girl, Sheriff," Williams said, his voice pitched for the circle of officers gathered around them. "You reminded everyone of what matters. You taught us what we forgot. Pay attention." The handshake was firm, deliberate. Cameras from arriving media crews snapped the moment, but Tom barely noticed. His eyes stayed on Chloe as paramedics guided her towards a waiting ambulance. She looked back one last time, her lips trembling against the oxygen mask. And in that glance was something words could never hold: trust, gratitude, and the fragile light of survival. Detective Morrison approached next, the same man who sneered Mayberry CSI hours earlier. Now his expression was stripped of arrogance, replaced with something heavier: humility. "Sheriff, I owe you an apology," he said quietly, but loud enough for the others to hear. "We all do. We were buried in data. You read the ground and found the truth. That's hell. That's what the job's supposed to be." Hayes stepped in beside him, nodding. "Old school, huh? Guess some lessons don't go out of style." Tom gave them both a tired half smile. Wasn't about style. It was about the kid who needed to come home. Behind them, Lucy stood at the edge of the chaos, rain still clinging to her jacket, hair plastered to her face. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The pride in her eyes was louder than any words. Pride in the man who taught her that cases aren't solved by screens alone. pride in the fact that instinct still mattered in a world obsessed with metrics. The scene dissolved into protocol, crime scene tape, evidence bags, statements. By the time the last cruiser pulled out, dawn was spilling over the mountains, turning the wet roads to rivers of gold. Tom drove in silence, past shuttered mills and skeletal logging equipment, relics of a life that had defined these hills for generations. The radio crackled with chatter, requests for interviews, debrief schedules, congratulations from the governor's office, but he left it on low, letting the static hum like a background music to thoughts too heavy for words. At home, the world was quiet. His porch creaked under his boots as he eased into the old wooden chair that had carried more sunrises than he could count. The coffee in his hand steamed against the chill, the smell grounding him in something simple and true. From here, the mountains stretch in layered silhouettes, ancient and indifferent to the drama of men. Somewhere beyond those ridges, news vans were setting up live shots. Headlines were being written about the small town sheriff who outsmarted a task force with nothing but instinct and patience. Tom didn't care about headlines. He cared about a 14-year-old girl eating breakfast in her own kitchen because he'd refused to wait for backup. He cared about a broken man named Adam Lawson, now in custody, who might have walked a different path if someone had listened sooner. He lifted the mug, watching the steam curl like a ghost in the pale light, and let the quiet settle deep in his bones. This job had never been about glory. It had always been about this, about bringing someone home, about proving that paying attention still mattered when the world was too busy chasing the next shiny solution. In the distance, the first school bus groaned along the highway. Life was moving on. It always did. Tom leaned back in his chair, the mountains catching the first light of dawn, steam curling from his coffee like breath in the morning chill. The phone inside would ring soon. Reporters, officials, people who'd never set foot on this porch wanting to understand his method. But there was no method, no secret formula, just this: slow down, look closer, and never stop listening. His gaze swept over the hills he'd called home his whole life. Somewhere out there, a girl was waking up in her own bed because an old cop trusted his instincts over their computers. The world would keep changing. Technology would keep racing ahead. But wisdom didn't live in data centers or command trailers. It lived in the eyes of someone who'd never stopped looking. Tom took one last sip of coffee, let the quiet settle around him, and allowed himself the smallest of smiles, because everyday heroes are all around us.